What is up, guys? Geny here at healthluminary.com, and today on the vlog is all about the digestion. So just a few things that I want to go over about the things that I'm going to be talking about today, what I'm going to be covering. You may or may not have heard these terms before, but number one, we're going to be talking about the GALT, which is the immune system of the gut. And secondly, we're also going to be going over the mucosal barrier, what that is and why that is so important. And thirdly, I also want to talk about how having an elevated cortisol to DHA ratio can suppress the immune system in the gut. And the cortisol and the DHA are actually hormones that are made in the adrenal glands. So there is a relationship there between the adrenal glands and digestion. And lastly, I want to go over what are the common culprits in negatively affecting this barrier, and what can we do about it to restore that lining back. So that's all coming up. So let's go ahead and get started. Digestion, I thought I'd start with, what it is and why it's so important. So digestion is really simply a mechanical as well as a chemical process that converts food into its smallest form so that it can be absorbed by the body. And once it's absorbed by the body, it means that our cells can make use of those nutrients that have been derived from the macromolecules, which are protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So why is this so important? Well, digestion is actually a very necessary part of life because, number one, without digestion, we're not going to be able to absorb the nutrients from the food that we're eating, and those nutrients are important in the function of our cells. And our cells contain our DNA that actually, encodes the information of who we are. So digestion is important because it supports the building blocks of life, and it supports the cell in continuing to make who we are. Basically our skin, the color of our hair, everything. Okay. Digestion is also important because after all the food has been broken down, the nutrients are actually necessary to keep the homeostasis of the internal environment of the body. We all work. So maybe it's good to start with the three major food groups, okay? And that is our protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Then go ahead and start with, say for example, a food. A good one would be pizza, right? So let's go ahead and approach this whiteboard here. I'm not a Picasso, so excuse my drawing. This is basically the mouth, and this is the digestive tract. Here's the liver, and here's the stomach, and of course the gut here, the small intestines and the large intestines. So just be aware. So food starts in the mouth. It goes in, right? It goes in, and right away, our mouth, along or with the help of the teeth and the saliva, start breaking down the pizza. Initially, there's already some salivary amylase and lipase that actually are secreted in order to break down the sugar in the pizza, and also the fat. Of course, I'm kind of oversimplifying this process, but there are a lot of other activities also that's happening in the mouth, and there are other enzymes that are being released in order to break down other food items in there. But mainly, it's releasing those initial enzymes to start breaking the food. And once it's make its way down, it goes in to the stomach, and of course that food is now introduced to the acid, which is basically the hydrochloric acid of the stomach, and it has a pH of about 1 or 2, okay? And it starts churning those food, and it continues to break them down over and over, churning it until it becomes chyme. Write that down, chyme. Okay, and the chyme enzyme basically is the food that's been digested with HCl or hydrochloric acid, and I think it's going to continue doing that, churning and churning for about 2 to 3 hours before it's make its way down to the intestines. And finally, okay, once it's ready to be taken down into the intestines, so this is the area that I kind of want to focus on, okay, because this is where a lot of our digestion, assimilation, and absorption happen. So, and you will know that the three important key points from this point on is that, number one, understand the key role of the liver and the gallbladder in helping these foods get digested. And secondly, also, the second point is the pancreatic enzymes, okay, how that comes into play. And thirdly, very, very important also, is what you call the brush border enzymes. Enzymes that are in the lining of our gut that continue to break down further food, okay? Those three things are very important to understand and realize that they are happening in orchestration, in unison with one another, okay? All right, so let's focus on the intestines. I want to talk about that and dive deep into it. If I were to take a small segment of the intestines, and I want to look at the inside, okay, the inside, and let's just zoom in on that one little segment right there, and I'm going to blow it out right here, okay? So this is this segment here in a much bigger scale. All right, so the inside of our intestines, the hollow space, is what you call the lumen. It's like, that's the inside. That's the hollow space inside our intestines. You know how our intestines is like a tube. But if you actually look at the wall of our intestines, it looks like it has a lot of, you know, folds, just like this. It has a lot of infolds, okay? And those infolds are basically, they are basically made of epithelial cells. And these epithelial cells is basically where the mucosal barrier is formed. This is a very important part of our intestines because this is what you call the brush border. And this is like the structure basically of the intestines. So starting right here, one of these, this is actually the villi. See these finger-like projections, but it doesn't stop there. It also has, if you look at the prickly looking things above the villi, they're also called the microvilli. They're even smaller than the villi. Why is this important? Okay, because number one, if you think about it, the reason why we have these villi is so that it'll increase the surface area in which food will be absorbed, okay? So pretend that my fingers are the villi, and right in here, this is where, you know, food is being absorbed, right? Along with the microvilli as well on top of it. It just really, the purpose is to increase that surface area, and by increasing that surface area, the more nutrients you can absorb. That's why it's very important. This mucosal barrier is like the second skin. It's a second layer of protection. First one was our skin, right? It protects us from, you know, from toxins that is in the air or in the water. Same thing with the mucosal barrier. It's a second skin. Its function is to actually let nutrients in, but also at the same time, it keeps the bad stuff out. It can just really identify which ones are good for us and which ones are bad. So that mucosal barrier, basically, it comprises of mucus, hence mucosal barrier, and also there are some beneficial bacteria in this barrier. Like I told you earlier, 70 to 80% of our immune system is in the gut, and that's where the gut comes in. It is basically the gut associated lymphoid tissues. It's where their immune cells are actually located, and that is where they are generated right here in the mucosal barrier, okay? And one of those immune cells is what you call the secretory IgA, or SIG-A for short. And that immunoglobulin A is very important in fighting infection. So if you ended up with the flu or a cold, this secretory IgA is what's going to help you fight that infection off. So the adrenal glands produces some hormones that actually may affect or suppress the SIG-A. And I told you that having an elevated ratio of cortisol to DHEA, and elevated meaning anything that's beyond 6 to 1, meaning that the cortisol is 6 to 1, anything higher than that is actually too high. So I've seen in my practice already, and looking at clients' results and cases, you don't often find this 6 to 1 ratio. It's always higher than that. I've even had I've seen results where it's about 66 to 1 or beyond. So it's pretty high. And that alone right there, that elevation of this stress hormone, which is cortisol, DHEA is actually the precursor to our sex hormones. It's what actually helps build our body. And the cortisol, if it's too elevated, it actually eventually breaks the body down. So now I would like to go over what are some of the things, common culprits that actually destroy the lining of our gut. And you know this because people have constipation, people are having IBS nowadays, it's kind of hard to turn away our attention to what's happening, but this is the reality. A lot of people are having some gut issues. So with that, I will tell you that the most common thing that may destroy the lining of the gut is coming from the food that we're eating. And those foods can be offensive to us. It's offensive in such that you're actually reacting to that food. And when you're having a reaction to a food, it actually triggers inflammation in the gut. Or it may not just be in the gut. It can also be outside of the gut, somewhere else in the body. Okay? So, and the most common offensive food of all is basically gluten. Gluten is one of the components of wheat, not just wheat, but also barley, rye, and then there's some cross-contamination with oat and soy. So gluten is a very, very common inflammatory causing food. And the truth of the matter is it just can't be digested, in the intestines by our body. It just can't be broken down. That in itself will destroy eventually the lining of the gut. I mean, it is pretty intact. I mean, every time you eat gluten, it will break down that barrier, but eventually it actually rebuilds itself up, which is amazing. But chronically having that attack from gluten, eventually that barrier is just not going to regenerate itself again. It's going to be compromised. So when you have a compromised mucosal barrier, that lining of the gut, you're opening yourself up for opportunistic microorganisms that's just going to take count in the lining of your gut, and you're going to end up with most likely some overgrowth of certain bacteria, and because of that, you're gonna be infested and may end up having some type of bacterial infection or whatnot, or parasitical infestation. There are other things that also destroy the lining of the gut. Continuous use of antibiotics actually destroys that lining, because remember I told you that this lining consists of beneficial bacteria. So if you're taking antibiotics, it takes away the bad stuff, it takes away the bad bacteria, but along with that, it's also getting rid and killing off all of the other beneficial flora that's in this barrier. And we need that flora in order to assimilate and digest food and actually assimilate vitamins and minerals as well. So if when you're taking antibiotics, that's what typically happens. It destroys the lining of the gut. And if you continue to take it in time, it's just going to continue to, basically destroy this brush border to the point that it looks like, what do you call that, Berber. See, it's supposed to be a shaggy carpet, right? That's what it looks like to me. And then when it's destroyed, when there's villus atrophy, then it just literally looks like a Berber carpet. And so you're literally losing that, surface area. And when you don't have that surface area anymore, you're not going to be able to absorb nutrients. How do we restore the lining of the gut? There are many ways to do this, and I'm actually going to link. I made a post about how to restore the health of your digestion. I'm going to actually include the link below, and it's one of my earliest blog posts. I think it was from the beginning of this year. So one of the things, and I always do this, even especially with my clients, is that you have to modify the food that you're eating, your diet. We always have to look at the diet. So there's always something that has to be avoided, and like I told you already, gluten is one of them. Avoiding those offensive and inflammatory foods that you're reacting to is a good way to actually reduce inflammation and try to help the lining restore itself and let it heal, So I would suggest that in order to do that, bring in some real food, and I would start with investing in some good meat as much as possible, grass-fed, pasture-raised, or organic meat, specifically nothing that has been injected with antibiotics or some hormones. Same thing with your produce, vegetables, and fruits. Keep it just, try to invest in organic, non-GMO, because those things will tend to have a lot of toxin in them, and toxins are known to destroy the lining of the gut. So if you're going to have dairy, make sure that the dairy that you get is something that's organic and whole. Fat is not the one that's going to make you fat. Fat is needed by our cells. So as long as the dairy is free of hormones and antibiotics, it's great as long as you can tolerate dairy, right? But how do you know if you can tolerate that? Well, again, there are some tests that you can run so that you can take the guessing out of it. You can contact me about that if you are interested. Bringing in some good bacteria back in your gut, especially when it has been destroyed by antibiotics and other things. So having a good probiotics as a supplement is great. I'm taking Garden of Life. I'm not an affiliate, but it's something that I take myself. It's great. Other things too is, some good supplements would be to bring in some enzymes, digestive enzymes for support, especially if gallbladder is no longer available. I know some people that don't have gallbladders anymore. That is a void that has to be filled. Imagine, that's a challenge to break down fat, since when you get rid of the gallbladder, you're literally affecting the way you break down fat molecules. So I would definitely consider bringing in some enzymes and also this supplement called ox bile to actually help the body break down the fat molecules. Okay, so that is when supplementation can be very useful in its context, right? That is when you can actually use the supplement in order to support and substitute for what is missing. So, and also lastly, continue investigating we have to always look at the underlying causes of our symptoms. And if it's destroying the mucosal barrier, what else is actually could be causing that? So, you know, trying to investigate for the root causes of these things is also important. That should be part of a protocol. Anyway, I think that's all I can think about, guys. Hopefully this is helpful. If you want more updates from Health Luminary or from me, please go to my website and subscribe to my list. And also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get the latest updates. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I will see you next time. And if you have any questions, please comment below. And thank you for the folks that actually send in their questions on Facebook. I appreciate it. Again, so helpful. It allowed me to work on my presentation by honing in on your questions. So hopefully I addressed them all, and I guess I will see you next time, guys. Thank you for watching.